We now have a unique opportunity, again, to put country in front of politics. I think that many of the people that are in the Congress of the United States understand what this is all about. They understand the implications of trade. But there's one other thing that I think they all understand, and all of us in this room need to reflect on this. The two nations that most vociferously oppose this agreement are China. You look at Xi, I'm astounded every day about another repressive technique that he uses to control his people, even going so far as to try to regulate or dismantle the youth involvement in politics in China. Xi's been very repressive, and not only that, we're all clearly aware that it's been the reluctance of Xi and the Chinese to put the pressure that needs to be put on North Korea. They walked away from it, leaving the rest of the world wondering what to do and bringing up issues about mutual security. Vladimir Putin probably wakes up every day thinking about how he can complete the work he started in the Crimea, thinks about Ukraine and how much he'd like to gobble it up, or even the kind of actions he's now taking to threaten the Baltics. So, folks, it's really pretty simple. Economically, trade always makes sense. Are there losers in trade? Yes, there are. And that's why it's important that we have a system that can retrain people for the jobs of the future. Frankly, if you don't trade, you hurt consumers. If you don't trade, you hurt innovation. If you don't train, you withdraw from the world. But from the geopolitical sense, it is absolutely critical that the United States stand with many of these nations that are in some ways economically weak, including a nation like Vietnam that is now asking us to work with them to develop a strong partnership that would have an economic underpinning. But that economic underpinning is absolutely going to lead to a strengthened sense of America's influence in Asia. Could you imagine if the United States of America decided, as I told one congressman this morning, if we turned our back on those nations in Asia that are looking to us in a great sense of partnership to give them the courage and the strength to stand against a rising China? So both from an economic point of view and a geopolitical point of view, where will we be if we turn this down? And this is what gives us a unique opportunity again in this city that I've come to not quite understand, that these kinds of issues is where politics goes out the window and where the good of America has to be represented and has to be respected. I appreciate the President inviting the group that we had in there this morning. He's very passionate about the need to do this. He's willing to work with those who are both for and against, and he's willing to really put his shoulder to the wheel. For me, I've got two 16-year-old daughters. I worry about the future of this country. America can't afford to lock the doors and lower the blinds and ignore the rest of the world. We're a force for good. And this TPP will help us not only on the economic side, but will also allow us to continue to be a strong world leader for good. Repression, lack of human rights, lack of democracy that some of these opponents to this deal support is not something that the United States should take lightly. I would call on my former colleagues in the House and the Senate to think here over the next couple weeks about the implications of saying no and what it will mean for our future, and the fact that they can cast a vote that can strengthen our country and our alliances around the world. To me, that's what's at stake, and frankly, that's why I'm here today. I also think that the business community, I was never a big fan of this Import-Export Bank, but the business community did a very effective job in talking about the fact that this is about jobs. We had a great, brilliant woman in there today, the head of IBM, and I think the suggestion to her is to make sure that the employees of IBM let members of Congress know that this is about my job, this is about my family, this is about my community. I get reactions like, well, you're a Republican. Why are you supporting something that the president wants? I mean, we cannot get to the point in America that because a Democrat wants something that you happen to agree with, you can't agree with them. There's plenty of things that I disagree with President Obama on. But the idea that I'm a Republican and therefore I can't work with Democrats, or you're a Democrat and you can't work with Republicans, how does anybody think that the issues of debt, Social Security, Medicare, health care, any of these issues are going to be resolved when we spend all of our time fighting with one another? You see, I don't recognize this town much anymore, because now it's become so much about politics. And when politics is the order of the day and partisanship trumps country, we drift. We drift as a nation. And I'm extremely concerned about what I see. This is a moment for people to begin to reverse that, to think deep inside of themselves about what matters when it comes to public service. This is an opportunity for the Congress to carry out its responsibility. And because, somebody didn't support a trade agreement, who's running for president, so what? We disagree with presidents. I disagree with this president on a lot of things, okay? But I happen to agree with him strongly on this thing. So, I don't think because we have this presidential election that somehow the Congress that's sitting there shouldn't be able to move forward on this agreement, particularly when I think it's vital. So, and I don't think it's those issues that really are the ones that I think there are a lot of people in America who feel very frustrated. They feel very vulnerable. You know how I understand it? Because I grew up in it. Where I grew up in McKees Rocks was a town, if the wind blew the wrong way, people found themselves out of work. And sometimes simple proposals to solve difficult problems sell, but they never work. They never work. Blaming somebody's loss of a job on somebody from Mexico that came in and took your job, that's a simple way to scapegoat, no matter who they are, whether it's, or Bernie and his business of the only reason why you don't have something because all the rich people in the world, they took what you have. I just think that's just wrong. And I know it's boring to have complicated solutions to complicated problems, but we'll end up back there. We will end up back there, mark my words, or we will drift. I know is there's a chance for the House and the Senate to actually do something, and here's what I do believe. I believe there are people both in the House and the Senate that will play pure politics with our future to take care of themselves. And let me also suggest to you, when that's what you do, when you leave Washington, you didn't accomplish anything other than what? Obstruct? Look, I've been involved in more fights on Capitol Hill than about anybody within my party and with the other party. But at the end, you have to accomplish something. And sometimes politics today in this town, it's overwhelming us. We all know it. What are we, kidding ourselves? There's too much politics and not enough caring about being an American. Am I right?
You're right.
Thank you. Look, first of all, for the consumer, you shut down trade, you will get products that cost more and don't have quality. So to the truck driver, you want to have textiles or cars or whatever it is that are not as good and cost you more, go ahead. Secondly, I know those truck drivers. I grew up in a blue-collar town. They love our country. Our folks in the truck driving blue-collar world don't want to turn power over to the Chinese or the Russians. They love America. That's another given. Let me tell you one other thing. We are a country. We are now a knowledge nation. We supply the ideas, the brain power, to move things, to bring about progress. Progress defined as improving our standard of living. That truck driver's worried about his or her kids. The biggest problem we have today is that our education system at all levels is not preparing our children for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. Furthermore, We also don't have the capability to retrain somebody. And we want to talk about somebody left behind? Yeah, a 53-year-old man or woman who one day heard they were out of work and now they don't know what to do. You see, the whole system has broken down. We have an education system that reflects the way we lived 100 years ago. We've got a higher education system that costs too much and doesn't appropriately provide kids with the skills that they need. And we do not have a job retraining system in this country. That should come with any trade deal, because there will be some people who will be displaced. But you know, where I grew up in Pittsburgh, we had steel mills. For anybody that reads the New York Times on Sunday, there was an incredible article about 500 people in Pittsburgh growing to 1,000 who are involved with Uber in autonomous vehicles. We may no longer make the iPhone. We don't manufacture the iPhone, but we created the iPhone. And these knowledge jobs pay a lot more. So to that truck driver, you're going to get your children a good education. We're going to train them for an entire lifetime. And they're going to be living in an exciting world of drones and autonomous vehicles and iPhones and Skype and all this incredible stuff that we see every single day. We can't go backwards to buggy whips. We have to go forward to these exciting new innovations that will mean more wages, better jobs, more consistent work, but we need to change everything. I mentioned to the president before I left, he and I had a little bit of time together, the whole education system, it all needs to be changed. I want to ask you all have children. I think Josh is going to wrap this up. Do you think we're training your children for the jobs of today, the jobs of tomorrow? Most young people will have between 5 and 10 jobs in a lifetime. Are we giving them the resilience, the knowledge, and the capability to be flexible and to have a great life? We need to do that for our kids. We need to forget about politics and everything else and start to do it. So, Josh, thank you.